We left off where Rowdy and Jayberry were down in the bottoms and they found the drinking slough. And the monkeys are drunk on the sour mash, and Jimbo is trying to give Jayberry a cup of the sour mash. So we'll take it from there. I sat down on a stump, tipped the can up again, and took about 3 swallows that time. From the brush where I was hiding, Rowdy could see that I was getting along with the monkeys all right. He came crawling out of the brush on his stomach, heading straight for me. He always was jealous if I talked to or petted any kind of an animal. He couldn't even stand to see me petting an old hog or a cat. I held my breath and watched to see what the monkeys would do. They kept their eyes on Rowdy, but made no effort to jump on him. In every way that he could, Rowdy was showing those monkeys that he was the friendliest hound dog in the world. His long tail was fanning the air, and he was whimpering and inching along on the ground 1 foot at a time. He was a very pleased dog when he finally made it over to me all in one piece and sat down by my side. To show Rowdy that he also wanted to be his friend, Jimbo found another can, filled it full of sour mash, and set it down on the ground right in front of his nose. Rowdy always did figure that anything I ate or drank was plenty good enough for him. He leaned over and stuck the tip of his long pink tongue into the sour mash and then looked at me. "You see, Rowdy," I said, "that stuff doesn't taste half bad, does it? Go ahead and help yourself." Rowdy must have liked the taste of sour mash, for he lapped up the whole can. Jimbo was the best bartender that there ever was. Every time our cans were empty, he saw to it that they were filled up again. By this time, I was feeling so good I wanted to sing. Waving the can of sour mash and tapping the ground with my foot, I sang all the songs I knew and made up a few more. Because I was singing, Rowdy decided that he too would sing a little. Lifting his old head high in the air, he started howling a hound dog tune. Not to be left out of any of the merrymaking, the monkeys gathered around us, screeching and chattering. Jimbo danced all over the place, clapping his paws, squalling, grunting, and turning somersaults. The first thing I knew, monkeys were climbing all over me. They poked around in my ears with tickly little fingers, explored my eyes, nose, and mouth. I had a giggling fit when they ran their arms down the back of my shirt. Rowdy was going through the same thing I was. Monkeys were all around him, looking through the hair on his body as if they were searching for fleas. They lifted up his long, floppy ears, peered down them. They played with his tail, crawled upon his back, lifted up his lips, and inspected his teeth. Rowdy was really enjoying his newfound friends. With friendly whimpers, he was lapping every monkey he could reach with his long pink tongue. I never knew when I went to sleep, but I sure knew when I woke up. It was late in the evening, and I was as cold as a bullfrog. My stomach felt as if I had swallowed a handful of cockleburs, and I was sicker than I had ever been in my life. My head felt as big as a wagon wheel. It was pounding and throbbing and felt like it was going to split wide open any second. I couldn't see very well, and what I could see seemed to be all out of focus. There must have been 100 different trees in the bottoms, but they all looked the same to me. Every one of them was leaning way over, sideways. I thought that if I could close my eyes and give my head a good shake, it might straighten things out a little. I tried it and squealed like a stepped-on cat with the pain. My head felt as if it had exploded, and I was sure that my eyeballs had popped right out onto the ground. I couldn't imagine why I was so cold. My teeth were chattering, and I had goosebumps all over me. When I finally did discover why I was so cold, I jumped straight up and hollered in a loud voice, "Hey, my britches are gone!" I still had my shirt and shorts, but that didn't cover up very much of me because Mama never did make my shirts long enough. I looked all around for my britches, but they were nowhere to be seen. Rowdy was laying on the ground about 5 feet away, sound asleep. "Rowdy," I said in a loud voice, "wake up! You're a heck of a watchdog. You laid there sound asleep and let someone come in and steal my britches. Wake up now and help me find them before someone sees me like this." Rowdy got to his feet, but then he just groaned and lay down again. He didn't seem to care if I found my britches or not. "I know you're sick, Rowdy, but you're not any sicker than I am. Now you get up from there and help me find my britches. It'll soon be dark and I can't be running around in these bottoms half naked like this." Rowdy got to his feet again, but made no effort to walk. He just stood there, stiff as a board, with his head down and his legs spraddled out. I started over to see if I could help him, but something went wrong. I couldn't seem to walk straight and kept angling off to one side. I missed Rowdy by at least a good 5 feet, and I had to grab hold of a tree to keep from falling down. I was drunk, and that's all there was to it. After a lot of grunting and whimpering, Rowdy got his feet to working and started over to see if he could help me a little. But he seemed to be about in the same shape I was in. He wobbled all over the place, and his rear end kept trying to get ahead of his front end. "Boy, Rowdy," I said, holding my throbbing head in my hands, "I didn't know that sour mash would make a fella feel like this. I thought it had to be made into whiskey first before it could make you drunk." I had forgotten all about the monkeys, and when they did cross my mind, I started looking for them. I looked all around the whiskey still and up in the trees, but there wasn't a monkey around, and it was so still in the bottoms that all I could hear was the gurgling of sour mash fermenting in the barrels. The very sound of that stuff gurgling made me sicker than ever. "Rowdy," I said, "I can't understand where my britches went. I don't think anyone would want them because they were patched all over. I wonder if that Jimbo monkey took them off me and ran away with them. I'll bet anything that's what happened. Now I know why he kept pouring that sour mash down us. He wanted to get us drunk so he could take my britches." Up until that time, I hadn't given much thought about how I was going to explain to Mama about losing my britches. When I didn't think about it, I got really shook up. There just wasn't any way that I could explain anything like that to Mama. As far back as I could remember, Rowdy and I had run along those game trails like 2 wild deer. But on that day, the trail didn't seem to be any bigger than a twine string. The only way I could stay on it was by holding onto the bushes on each side. Rowdy was behind me and was having all kinds of trouble. He just couldn't seem to keep himself pointed in the right direction. We finally made it to the rail fence around our field, and there we ran into another problem. Rowdy and I had jumped that old fence 1,000 times, but that day the fence looked like it was 20 feet high. Rowdy didn't even try to jump the fence. He found a wide place between the 2 rails, low enough to the ground, and wiggled his way through. I made it to the top of the fence in pretty good shape. Then something went wrong. I got dizzy and fell off. For a few seconds I thought for sure that I had broken my neck. When I finally reached the gate going into our yard, I thought I had made it, but just as I opened the gate, all my luck ran off and left me. Daisy came around the corner of the house on her crutch, humming a silly little tune. She took one look at me standing there half naked, and by the expression on her face, you would have thought that she had stepped on a snake. Her mouth flew open, and she gasped like she had just swallowed a butterfly. "Jayberry," she said in a loud voice, "where on earth are your britches? It's not very nice to run around half naked like that. What's the matter with you anyway?" I didn't say a word. There wasn't anything I could say. I just groaned way down deep, wrapped both arms around the gatepost, and held on. Daisy came over, peered at me, and said, "Jayberry, you're as white as an egg. Are you sick?" "Sick," I said. "Daisy, I'm sicker than I've ever been in my life. I think I'm dying." When I told Daisy that I thought I was dying, it scared her. She caught hold of my arm and said, "Here, let me help you into the house." Before I could unwind myself from the gatepost, Daisy turned loose of my arm, stepped back, and said, "Phew, what's that smell?" I didn't say anything, and I wouldn't even look at her. Daisy stuck her nose up close to me and started sniffing. With a frown on her face, she stepped back and said in a disgusted voice, "Jayberry, you're not sick. You're drunk. You smell just like an old whiskey bottle." "I can't help it if I'm drunk," I said. "I'm sick just the same." Looking toward the house, Daisy yelled in a voice louder than I had ever heard her yell, "Mama, Mama, come and look at Jayberry. He's as drunk as a boiled owl and naked as a jaybird." Mama must have had a pot in her hands when she heard Daisy yell, because I heard something hit the floor with a loud bang and clatter its way across the floor. I wanted to run, but knew if I ever turned loose of the old fence post, I would probably fall flat on my face. Mama came sailing out of the house, looking more surprised than she did the time she found the young hoot owl I had put under an old sitting hen that had just hatched a bunch of chicks. In the late evening shadows, and with me being hugged up so close to the fence post, Mama didn't see me right away. She looked at Daisy and says, "Daisy, what did you say?" "Look at him, Mama," Daisy said, pointing her finger at me. "He's so drunk he's cross-eyed and he's lost his britches. Can you imagine anything like that?" "No," Mama said in a slow, cold voice. "I can't imagine anything like that." "Go smell him, Mama," Daisy said. "He smells just like an old whiskey bottle, and you can see for yourself that he's lost his britches." With a deep frown on her face and an uncertain look in her eyes, Mama came and looked me over from my head to my feet. Then she grabbed me by the arm, shook me a little, and said in a very hard voice, "Jayberry, are you drunk?" "I guess I am, Mama, but I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to?" Mama shouted. "What kind of an excuse is that? Who gave you that whiskey anyway? You tell me now. Somebody's going to get into trouble over this. Did those Gravelly boys get you drunk?" "I haven't seen the Gravelly boys, Mama. That Jimbo monkey got me drunk." "Oh, for heaven's sake, Jayberry," Mama said. "You don't expect me to believe that, do you?" "It's the truth, Mama," I said. "There's a whiskey still down in the bottoms. That's where I found the monkeys. They were drinking sour mash, and I guess I had a few drinks with them. I didn't know that stuff would make you drunk." "What happened to your britches?" Mama asked. "I don't know, Mama. I went to sleep, and when I woke up, they were gone. I think that Jimbo monkey got away with them." Just then, Daisy let out a squeal and said, "Look, Mama, Rowdy's drunk too." Poor old Rowdy. He could tell by the tone of Mama's voice that the fat was in the fire, and he was trying very hard to disappear altogether. He was trying his best to get under the porch. Mama looked at Rowdy, and then, looking up at the heavens, she closed her eyes and said, "Dear Lord, what have I done to deserve this?" Grabbing me by my left ear, Mama said, "Come on, young man, you're going to bed. Your monkey hunting days are over. I've had all I can take." Mama wasn't any too gentle about putting me to bed. She just kind of wadded me up and crammed me down under the covers. I fell asleep immediately. I woke up sometime during the night and heard Mama talking to Papa, and she sounded as if she was real upset. I heard her say, "As far as I know, he's never lied to me, but I just can't believe that a bunch of monkeys could get a boy drunk. I still think that someone got him drunk." Papa laughed and said, "No, I don't think so. I know there's a still down in the bottoms because while I'm working the fields and if the wind is right, I can smell the sour stuff." Mama said, "I don't care if there are 100 stills down there. Who ever heard of a bunch of monkeys getting a boy drunk?" "Probably happened just like he said it did," Papa said. "Those monkeys found that still, and you know as well as I do that most animals love sour mash. It's made of everything that animals like. Sugar, corn, malt, and yeast. There's probably more to this than we know. I'll have a talk with him in the morning and find out all I can about it." "You had better talk to him," Mama said. "I don't think I can take any more of this monkey business. Why, if that monkey is as smart as everyone seems to think he is, he might catch Jayberry down on the river and drown him." Papa laughed and said, "Oh, I don't think anything like that's going to happen." Mama never should have said anything about Jimbo drowning me, because after I went back to sleep, I had a horrible dream. I dreamed that the monkeys caught Rowdy and me down in the bottoms. Then they threw us down a deep well that was about half full of ice-cold water. Rowdy and I were swimming for our lives. I could see all the monkeys looking down at us and laughing. I woke up swimming in my bed. Chapter 10. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and twice as sick as I had been the day before. My whole body screamed for water, and my throat was so dry I had to jiggle my Adam's apple 3 or 4 times before I could swallow. I had such a nasty taste in my mouth it reminded me of the time I had eaten some green persimmons. When I first opened my eyes, I couldn't remember a thing. For a few seconds, I didn't even know where I was. Everything I looked at was going round and round and round. Then, little by little, the spinning stopped and things started coming back to me. The monkeys, the whiskey still, drinking the sour mash, and the loss of my breeches. The more I thought about everything that had happened to me, the more ashamed I became. I tried covering my face with a pillow, but that didn't blot out anything. I was lying there feeling sorry for myself and wondering how Rowdy was making out when Papa and Daisy came into my room. Papa smiled and said, "How do you feel?" "I'm sick, Papa. I'm sick enough to die." Papa laughed and said, "Oh, I don't think you'll die. You may think you will, but you won't. In a day or two, you'll be as good as new." "Papa," I said, "I didn't know that sour mash would make you drunk. I thought that it had to be made into whiskey first." Shaking his head, Papa said, "Oh, no. Sour mash will make you just as drunk as whiskey does and twice as sick. Once that stuff gets down in your stomach, it just keeps on fermenting and you'll be sick." Up until then, Daisy hadn't opened her mouth. She just stood there looking disgusted and listening to Papa. Turning to leave the room, she said, "Well, I guess I'd better get busy because it looks like I have my work cut out for me." I was so sick that I didn't pay much attention to what Daisy had said, but I should have known that I was in for another one of her Red Cross go-arounds, and that was all there was to it. I didn't have to worry about Mama paying me a visit because she was really put out with me. This didn't bother me too much because Mama's mad spells never did last very long. My mama was just about like any other boy's mama. She would stay mad at me for a little while, and then she'd start feeling sorry for me, and everything would be all right. Papa said, "I can't understand why you drank that sour mash. I know that you've found stills before, and I'm pretty sure you didn't drink any of that mash." "I didn't, Papa," I said. "That was the first time I ever drank anything like that. Everything happened so fast, the first thing I knew, Rowdy and I were both drinking it like water." Papa sat down on my bed and said, "Suppose you start at the beginning and tell me all about it. I'd like to know just what did go on down in those bottoms." I could always talk to Papa much better than I could to Mama. It seemed that he could understand me better. I figured it was because he too had once been a boy. I told Papa everything that had happened, but I was so ashamed about losing my breeches, I didn't look him in the eye while I was telling it. Papa laughed and said, "To me, it looks like that Jimbo monkey wanted to get you and Rowdy drunk so he could steal your breeches. What do you suppose he did with them?" "I don't know, Papa. He could be wearing them for all I know. I wouldn't put anything past that old monkey." Papa said, "Well, I can't see where there's been too much harm done, but I don't believe I'd tie into that sour mash anymore. It might get to be a habit, and that's not good at all." "Papa, you don't have to worry about me. I won't be drinking any more sour mash or any other kind of whiskey as long as I live. If drinking makes a fella as sick as I am, I won't never drink it again, and I mean that too." Papa smiled and said, "You know, if a fella can learn something through experience when he's young, he doesn't ever forget it." "I won't ever forget this, Papa, and if I ever get a hold of that Jimbo monkey, he won't forget it either." Papa laughed and said, "I've always figured that a man can do almost anything if he puts his mind to it and doesn't ever give up." "I won't ever give up. I'll catch that monkey if I have to chase him clear to Arkansas." Getting up from the bed, Papa looked at his watch and said, "Your mother and I are going to the store today. Is there anything you want me to tell your grandpa?" "Just tell him I'll be up to see him in a day or two, and that we'll have to figure out some other way to catch those monkeys." Papa smiled and said, "I don't suppose you want me to tell him about how you lost your breeches, do you?" I don't care, Papa. Mama will tell Grandma all about it, and she'll tell Grandpa. As long as we keep it in the family, I don't mind so much, but I sure wouldn't want anyone else knowing about it." Chuckling to himself, Papa left the room. It wasn't long until I heard our old wagon leave and screech its way up the road. I had just about dozed off when, to my surprise, Daisy came into my room. She was all decked out in that silly-looking Red Cross uniform, and she was carrying a tray with a large bottle of castor oil and an empty water glass sitting on it. I could see that she had a book tucked under her arm. I thought, Oh no, if she gives me a dose of castor oil and then starts reading to me, I will surely die. It was the same old thing that I had gone through 100 times. Smiling all over, Daisy said, "Good morning, and how is my patient this fine morning?" "Oh, for heaven's sakes, Daisy, please, I'm too sick to go through any Red Cross business this time. I don't believe I could stand it." "I thought that you went to the store with Mama and Papa. You always do. How come you didn't go this time?" "Oh, I wanted to go," Daisy said. "I wanted to go very much, but Jayberry, a good nurse never leaves a sick patient." "You didn't have to stay here just because of me," I said. "I'm not that sick. I never will be that sick." For all the attention Daisy paid to my protests, I may as well have been talking to a post oak stump. Taking her thermometer, she started shaking it. I just groaned and crawled way down under the covers. Daisy started pulling at the quilt, saying, "Jayberry, you're acting like a baby. You sit up here now and let me examine you." "Go away," I shouted. "I'll be all right if you just go away and leave me alone." For a few seconds there was complete silence. Then I heard Daisy say, "Well, it says in my nursing book that when a patient gets unruly, a nurse is supposed to be stern." Reaching down under the covers, Daisy grabbed a handful of my hair. I was squealing like a scared chicken as I was pulled up to the head of my bed and propped to a sitting position with a pillow. "Now," Daisy said, sticking the thermometer in my mouth, "if you'll just be patient, this will be over in a few minutes." I was too sick to fight anymore. "All right," I mumbled. "If I die, it'll be your fault." Daisy smiled and said, "Jayberry, you won't die. You may think you will, but you won't. In a day or two, you'll be good as new. I hope." "You're just saying that because you heard Papa say it," I said. "No, I'm not," Daisy said. "I'm saying it because I'm a nurse, and nurses are supposed to cheer up their patients." I knew all too well that once Daisy had gotten into one of her Red Cross nursing spells, it was ridiculous to even think of trying to argue her out of it. So I just groaned, closed my eyes, and sat there while she looked me over. Counting silently, Daisy took my pulse. Then she looked at my eyeballs, felt my brow, and tapped around on me with her fingers. She even laid her ear on my chest and listened to my heartbeat. From the expression on her face, I seemed to be in pretty good shape until she took the thermometer from my mouth and looked at it. Frowning and letting out a low whistle, Daisy said, "Boy, Jayberry, you have a fever. Why, it's almost busted this thermometer." This scared me a little. I knew that I was sick, but I didn't think that I was sick enough to bust a thermometer. Daisy said, "Let me see your tongue." By this time, I was getting a little bit on the nervous side. Without any protest, I stuck my tongue out as far as I could. Daisy looked at it, and making a sour face, she said, "Yuck, Jayberry, your tongue is so coated it looks just like the inside of Papa's shaving mug." This really shook me up. "Is it that bad?" I asked. "Oh, it's not too bad," Daisy said, "but it's bad enough. I think I know what's causing it." "You do? What's causing it?" Daisy smiled. "Remember what Papa said about your stomach being full of that old sour mash? As long as it's in there, you'll just stay sick, and your tongue will be coated." "Daisy, I'm sick all over, but it's not my tongue that's sick. What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," Daisy said as she reached over and picked up the book she had brought with her when she came into my room. I saw that it was her nursing book. Daisy wet her thumb on her tongue and started thumbing through the pages. "Jayberry," she said, I don't know a thing about doctoring a drunk. I've looked all through my nursing book and I can't find anything that tells me how. But I know that somewhere in here I've read where it does tell me how to keep a patient's tongue from being coated." "Daisy, you don't think that I'm a drunk, do you? Just because I got drunk once doesn't mean I'm a drunk, does it?" "I'm not too sure about that," Daisy said, still turning pages and not looking at me. "From what I've heard and read, that's the way drunkards get started. They have one drink and then they have to have another one and another and another, and pretty soon they're drinking it by the barrel." "Daisy," I said very seriously, "if I live through this, you won't have to worry about me ever drinking anymore. I promise that. Why, I'll even cross my heart and hope to die." With a very sad look on her face, Daisy said, "I hope not, Jayberry. I sure would hate for us to grow up and have people see you staggering down the street and say, That's the old drunkard, J. Barry Lee. He's Daisy Lee's brother. I wouldn't believe I could stand it. I just wouldn't put up with it. I'd tell people that I didn't even know you." "Oh, Daisy," I cried. "I'm so sick now. I'm not an inch from the grave, and you keep talking about all those bad things. I thought you said that nurses were supposed to cheer up their patients, not bury 'em." Just then, Daisy's face lit up, and she said, "Oh, here it is." She sat down on the foot of my bed and started reading in silence. Finally, after what seemed like a week to me, Daisy sighed, closed her book, and said, "J. Barry, I think what you need is a big dose of castor oil." I always did think the very thought of castor oil was enough to make a buzzard sick. "Castor oil?" I said. "Why, Daisy, I couldn't take any of that nasty stuff. All you think about is castor oil. If I even mash my finger, the first thing you do is grab that old bottle." "Oh, J. Barry," Daisy said, taking the stopper from the bottle, "castor oil isn't hard to take. If you just close your eyes and swallow, you can't even taste it." "I can taste the darned stuff," I said. "I can taste it even before I take it." Holding the bottle out a foot above the glass, Daisy started pouring. The very sight of that slick, slimy-looking stuff gurgling down into the glass was more than my poor old sick stomach could bear. I jumped out of bed, flew to the window, and threw up all over the place. And that's where we'll stop. Bye till next time.